Justine Lupe, you went from one hit show right into another, Succession to Nobody Wants This. What has the last 2 years been like for you?
It's been awesome. I mean, I loved. There was some heartbreak with leaving Succession just because while you're in it that it's one of the best things that you'll ever do because there's just so few things that are ever that good. And saying goodbye to all my friends was pretty tough because you become close over, 6 years of shooting together. But have it followed up with another phenomenal, fun um interesting group of people with great writing that was totally different than what I'd done before and maybe gave me a little bit more responsibility as an actress. It's just been such a gift, and on top of that, to be pregnant while going through the whole process was also just awesome. So I feel very, very, very grateful for the last 2 years. It's been
Yeah,
just a treat.
congratulations. You had a baby in between when before they both aired, and you were pregnant in season one. And I felt like they hid that really well with your costuming.
Yeah, we had an incredible costume designer, Nagar, who basically brought me in every single week and did another fitting just to make sure that everything was still, okie dokie, because, your body just shifts week to week. It's like a wild thing. So, yeah, we had to kind of be really meticulous about like what we're showing and how she moves and how the clothes move on her while she's moving, make sure that, Morgan's not pregnant. Justine's pregnant.
It was funny because when you debuted your baby bump at the SAG Awards and I knew you were doing this show, I was like, oh, is she gonna be pregnant on the show? And then when I watched the show, I was like, oh, she's not, but they hid that really well.
Oh, yeah. And also it's like a sweet pocket of, I got to clock out right at 5-ish months, which is right before
Yeah.
you really pop. You think you look pregnant and then you realize what looking pregnant actually actually is.
Well, I mean, Succession was, so if I love the show so much, but it was eerily on the nose a lot of times. I think a lot of people are still scarred from America Decides, and Nobody Wants This is like fun escapism. Was that also something you were kind of looking for to follow up that? Because I kind of feel like maybe that's also what viewers are responding to right now with the show too.
Oh, yeah. Definitely is like a warm cup of something in the midst of just yikey, yikey. What's happening? Are we going to be okay? Um, I don't know if I like I necessarily was like, oh, I need to do something that will pull me out of that kind of thoughtfulness or headiness or the cerebral quality that Succession had. I definitely didn't think of it like that, but I was attracted to the fun of it. When I read the sides, I was attracted to how lively and biting and heartfelt it was at the same time. And I didn't necessarily think of it in relation to Succession, but I'm sure there was a part of me that was very happy to be doing something kind of light and fun and lively.
Yeah, for sure. I love Morgan, and I feel like she gets so interesting as the season went on. So, how much about her arc did you know when you went in for the show, and like what did you just get the first script, and like what were discussions like with Aaron?
Yeah, very, very, very little. I got the pilot. We didn't have the rest of the show. I had some sides, and then I knew that it was semi-autobiographical, so I was like, okay, I'm going to like dive into the well of social media and the online presence that these two women have, which is, a lot. They're very, very involved with the internet. And that was just so awesome for me because I felt like I just could just kind of like just I had a gluttony of riches in terms of what I was interested in pulling from. Morgan is an exact approximation of Sarah, but Sarah would say that she has nothing to do with with Sarah. But I was inspired. I was very inspired by Sarah, and had a lot of fun just kind of like picking up on her mannerisms and the way she dressed and the way she carried herself and like having fun with like, okay, well, what is all this? Like what leads to create this kind of a person? So yeah, I didn't have very many talk. I didn't have a talk with Erin. I knew like things like, oh, that she was divorced, and we talked about, like the black sheep element of her life and why she feels like that. We did like a day in the writer's room where I kind of got to ask some questions. But yeah, I had a lot of fun going into it, getting into it on my own.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the fact that she's divorced has been kind of like a throwaway line because it's mentioned like very in the first episode at dinner.
It's one of those things that, when you're in this show gave more real estate to the side characters, but this isn't a show about Morgan and Sasha. We're kind of lending our services to the bigger romantic narrative. But I hope that, with more time and more breathing room and more seasons, that we'll kind of figure out what happened there. I have my own imaginings, but I'm really curious to see, what Aaron has in mind in terms of reckoning with what that means, what the divorce was, what her past relationship is, what she's like in relationship, if there's more to come, I
I mean,
hope that some of
she's
that
all over those desperate dating apps, so we got to see a date
is
at some point.
deep, deep in the desperate dating apps. Yeah,
Yeah,
hanging out with baseball players and on the Pittsburgh team.
I love that pause that you took, team.
Yeah, Pittsburgh team.
Yeah. I like that's Morgan, being one of the loser siblings of the show. Like I feel like she's so relatable in that aspect too. When Joanne and Noah start dating, and you could kind of tell like she doesn't want it to work out because she doesn't want things to change,
Hmm.
too much. And so how jealous slash sad, I guess, is she to see that like they are actually good for each other and this might not be Joanne on, screwing up again and dating the wrong guy.
I mean, I've like talked about this before. I definitely know the feeling of being, in this like kind of codependent relationship with another woman where you're deeply enmeshed with another woman. You're like sleeping in the same beds as each other and you're like dating each other without any like physical intimacy. And so I know also what it's like to be like left because someone has to start the next chapter of their life with someone else. And there is like something like heartbreaking about that. Like I remember reading Midsummer Night's Dream and feeling that between Helena and Hermia, like that kind of just devastation that comes with like one of you falling in love. And so like, I feel like Morgan, it's not necessarily this like super cerebral heavy thing, but it's like a chaotic response to like the pain that she's feeling. And that's kind of like that she's just like all action and all talk and like all responsiveness and all reactivity and like and I don't think it's like deep seated in like some wish that her sister doesn't find love or like some ill intent. I think it's just like a kind of like an immature way of handling some deep heartbreak, actually,
Yeah, because he's
and
never
that
really
like,
dealt with it before.
yeah, yeah, she never dealt with it before. And she's like, oh no, I don't want to be left behind. And she also has had, I'm sure, she went through her own romantic experience. So I'm sure she's had the other side of that. And so it's like the first time that she's been dealt the other side of the stick, which is like, it's hard when you lose your girlfriends, your
Yeah.
sister.
Yeah, it's also like I feel like it's also kind of like when you're roommates too. It doesn't even need to be like super serious, but like, your roommate falls in love and moves out. Like that's a huge change and you don't want them to leave.
Oh,
Yeah.
totally. I mean, I totally know. And I've had friends come to me and tell me like, that like I feel like I'm like, left behind. I miss like, I miss being the one that's in your life. And it's like it's a real thing. We like grow out of these like really, really close camaraderies with other women. And, they don't grow out, we don't grow out of them, but they take on a new shape.
Yeah,
And
yeah. The,
sometimes
the relationship changes. Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how much of is Morgan also thinking about just like the business side of it? They have their podcast, the Spotify deal and everything, and now Joanne's stories are so boring.
Totally. I think that that's like the scapegoat and I think it's
Yeah.
real, but I also think that it's like her way of saying the thing that's like she would feel way too vulnerable to say, which is like she does say it in little moments for what like just tiny like little you see like glimmers of like what I want like I miss you. Like I want to be with you. Like, when they're at the thrift store and there's like that moment where you see that she actually like vulnerable and says like, but I don't want him taking over my spot. But for the most part, I don't know. I feel like, she's worried about the podcast, but she's not so worried about the podcast. I think it's kind of her like way of addressing something and like an excuse, and her way of kind of like keeping control over the whole situation is making it feel like it's like a work thing and not like a personal thing, you know?
Yeah. For sure. Well, when Sasha calls them the loser siblings, she pushes back on that. She's like, I'm not. But how much do you think that hurt her?
I think that she really doesn't think that she's the loser sibling, but I think that she has a bone to pick about being seen as the one who's not as competent. Like that she's like, I can actually do this. And I think it definitely strikes a chord, but she's very quickly is like, I'm on it. I'm going to figure out how to do this. I'm actually going to win this situation. And, so yeah, I think she has a long history of being seen as like maybe the like dumber one, or is the one who's not as like capable, or who's not like heading the front, and she would like more responsibility and for people to have more faith in her skill and her smarts. um but I also think she has a real confidence, like the whole thing about like we're the mean girls, we're going to come in, I like they can't screw with you, like she kind of is untouchable in a certain way, like, and that comes with kind of being like this like untethered, unfiltered person who has a lot of like awareness of what people think of her, but also just doesn't have the capacity to like negotiate with that,
Yeah.
you
I
know?
would say she has a lot of like casual confidence. I think that a lot of people probably would love to have themselves just to go after stuff. 'Cause-
Totally. I've thought about this in relation to Willa too. I think Willa has a similar thing. Like, she's existing in this like den of like this like shark pool with all these kind of like biting, vicious humans, and she's kind of moves through it a little bit unscathed because she just doesn't care. And there's something really fun about playing the person who's just like, okay, whatever. Like you can try, and I think Morgan is definitely like less, she's got more chaos to her than Willa. But she's definitely got the same like untouchable element to her that I find really fun to play because that's just not who I am as a
Yeah.
person.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I wish that Joanne had not crashed the Spotify meeting at the dinner that you're at. I was like, because I wanted
No.
Megan to just do this by herself and get a W.
I know, I know. I think that I felt the same way, and Erin's smart to put those moments in there so you understand where Morgan's coming from when she like, reacts or is a little bit like eruptive. That it comes out of like, oh man, I get it. I'd
Still
be
your
upset
thunder
too.
again.
Like
Yeah.
she was on a roll, and you're just gonna come in here and just take over like you're gonna steal the show.
And then become
So
official. Get off the app
yeah,
with your boyfriend.
everybody claps for you. Cool.
Well, I'm sure you know people are shipping the loser siblings. Did you and Tim ever expect that? Like you guys are the will they won't they of this show.
No, no. I mean, I'm so happy that people had as much fun with us as we had doing the part because the doing the roles because we had a blast. He's my favorite. He's just so funny and he's a comedic genius, and we had a real treat of a time doing it. So I'm so happy to see that people like seeing that dynamic. I don't even know if they actually want to see us like get together, or if it's more just that they like watching this weird thing that's happening, because the weird thing that's happening and the weird kind of dynamic and the like kind of like misfit match thing is what's interesting. And I don't know if crossing the line would be
Oh,
as
I
much.
don't want them to hook up. Well, first of all, it'll be adultery, and then it'll just ruin all the relationships. But I
Well, there's nothing fun about like wrecking a home.
know Morgan is not a home wrecker. She's a chaos agent, but she's not a home wrecker. But I
Totally.
love them. Like I feel like they're like Roman and Jerry in a way because I'm not sure what's going on there, but they should never actually hook up.
Yeah, yeah. But it's fun to watch whatever that weird thing is. Cool.
Well, I mean, how much did you guys and Aaron talk about their dynamic? Because I feel like it's so based on neither of them having friends of the opposite sex, which they discuss in the show as well.
Totally. We talked about it a lot because we were trying to figure out what it was, and there was kind of a plan for it to go somewhere different. And I felt like in order, we had real talks about like, okay, if that's actually happening, who is Morgan? Like that says a lot about who she is. Like you said, I don't see her as like a homewrecker. I see her as a chaos, like an agent of chaos, but I don't see her as someone who's like out to like destroy a family. It's not a casual thing to make a pass on a man who's like has a wife and a child. And I'm never one to say like no, but I just want to know, well, has the track been laid? Like, does that feel honest? Does it feel in line with who she is? And do we know, like, what are the implications if it does end up going there? So we talked a lot about that. Um, and I think that it like had an effect on the end of the season. I'm like, I'm glad they didn't go there. I'm glad that we had those dialogues. And I also am glad that Erin kept it vague and that she didn't cut it off because it was kind of confusing. Because there was also a part of me that was like, well, what is this? Can you explain to me? Like, what is this energy? And she was like, well, isn't that like, that's kind of like we're not sure. And like, isn't that interesting? And in the moment, I was like, yeah, but I want to know what's happening here so I know what we're doing. Like, what's my function in the scene? But it turned out to be like really interesting to play and to watch. Like, and my scenes with Tim are some of my favorite scenes to watch and were really fun to do. So, yeah, I'm glad that that was the thing that we talked about the most. And I think that we both got a lot out of that kind of back and forth as, artists and creators. I had a lot of
Well,
fun with
how
Aaron.
much like do you when you're doing those scenes and you do like essentially have to flirt with him to keep up, this dynamic? Like, how do you modulate the level of flirting there? Like, I'm thinking of like the finale, your guys' final scene together at the bar. You
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that because we played with it and we played with how much of it was just like playfulness and like having fun with each other and how much of it was a seduction and how much we had a lot of fun kind of trying to figure out what exactly worked. And I think the thing that Tim and I really tried to remind ourselves of and like tap into was and talked about was just that this is something that happens in adult relationships, that you meet people that you find magnetic and that you find sparkly and that you want to play with, and that you're kind of it's confusing. The boundaries can be confusing. You know what the hard set boundaries are, which is like I'm not going to transgress, like I'm not going to make a transgression, I'm not going to it's not going to be an adultery type of situation, but then there are all the gray areas of like, is it okay to like speak this way to someone? Is it okay to like take a sip of someone's drink? Is it okay to text? Like, and I think that I'm a lot of adults because when you're young, it's kind of cut and dry and you're not in these established lives. But when you're making these relationships as adults with other people that you find magnetic, you have to navigate like what that energy is. So we kind of just tried to like have fun with that. And yeah, and we did. We did. So yeah, to speak to like, what was that and how we went about it. We just kind of like tried all different things in the spirit of knowing what that energy is, but not wanting to like nail it down too hard.
Mhm. Yeah, sure. Well, what do you know about season two?
Well, I can't tell you much. I know that it's happening. I know that they're deep in the writer's room. I'm excited about some of the stories that they've got prepared. Some of the storylines, they're fun. I'm really excited. I really am excited about Jenny and Bruce joining the team as showrunners. I'm a huge fan, so I think it's gonna be cool. I can't. I'm really excited.
Mhm. And you won't be pregnant this time when you're
That I
shooting.
do know. That I know for sure. Very publicly say I will not be pregnant next season.
You have different blocking.
Oh my God. Yeah,
You
I'm
don't
going to
need
be
to
wearing
carry Rebecca's box in front of
there will
you.
be midriff. There will be tight clothing. There will be there will be a whole different thing. No, I all I can say is that yeah, I'm kind of excited to do it. Not pregnant, even though it was awesome and I had a blast being a pregnant lady doing my thing. I loved it. I'm really grateful for that experience, and I'm also excited to not do it pregnant.
Well, 2 months ago, you went viral for how you accidentally pooped in your dress on set.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
If you just Google your name, that's just like the
Isn't that
all the
wonderful?
headlines.
My partner loves that. He loves that I'm just like Justine poop.
Yes. But you also said that this was on Harry's Law and like Kathy Bates was waiting for you and she may not know that this is what happened. Does Kathy Bates now know?
hmm hmm
Mhm.
I know she knows because I saw Drew Barrymore address it on the Drew Barrymore show, and she was like, I didn't know. I knew she was like, she seemed nervous. Which I don't know was if that was like to the incident or just me being like a 22-year-old acting opposite Kathy Bates and me, she's like one of my heroes. So I think I might have just been a nervous person. But yeah, no, that was like a nightmare. It was truly a nightmare. And now it's really funny to think back on. And I wish that, I had like tape of just like me, like just like panicking in my trailer trying to figure it out. But no, in the moment it was painful. It was
That it's
excruciating. So
something that like Joanne and Morgan would share on their podcast for sure.
totally. I mean, we all have their whole thing is like vulnerability and sharing your most embarrassing stuff and like what, how all their taboos are actually things that we can all relate to. And pooping your pants is definitely taboo. And I think we've all done it.
Mhm. Well, finally, I'm a huge
Silent.
I'm like it's just
Yeah, we've all done it.
maybe, maybe. But well, I'm a huge Succession fan, so I have to ask, should Willa have been CEO?
No, no. I mean, it's fun to say, yeah, 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 but no. No, I don't think
She has the
she
confidence to be CEO. I don't, Lucas would not have chosen her, but
totally. I think she would be completely like, there would be a lot of fun. It would have been a different show. It would have been like that kind of Michael Scott kind of like just like the buffoon running the show kind of. I think it would have been really fun to see someone who has like all the delusional confidence that she could muster. I would have a lot of fun watching it, but my God, no, she's not equipped to run a company, let alone write a play, as we found out.
well,
So
she said she had a play reading in 6 to 8 months in the finale. So how do you think that reading went? As well as Sands did?
honestly, do you want to know the truth? I don't even know if that reading happened. Like any reading that you're planning 6 to 8 months out, it's like, ooh, oh God, like that's not promising sounding to me. So I kind of feel like it all fell through, and she was just like, oh, I like hyped up this reading that never even happened.
She's probably went back to just decorating Marsha's apartment with her
Yeah,
outprint couch, right?
bit more, yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
not visiting
Wow.
Connor in Slovenia, so
Totally. I love thinking about what is Willa doing. I feel like I should just check in with Jesse once in a while and have him give
should
me a little update.
check in with Jesse, check in with Alan, come up with something.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
Alan would be like, Justine, come on. But Jesse might,
he'll have some ideas. So,
yeah, totally. Bad genius. So thank
well, Justine, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time and congratulations on the show again.
you so much. It was so awesome to talk to you as well, and have a great day.